Do you know which is the shortest war in history? There's a certain intrigue that surrounds the brevity of these conflicts, a paradoxical blend of intensity and transience. Let's explore this fascination. Let's dive into the top 10 shortest wars in history, starting at number 10. Coming in at number 10, we have the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971. This was a military confrontation between India and Pakistan that occurred during the Liberation War in East Pakistan from the 1st of December to the 13th of December, making it a swift yet impactful war that lasted just 13 days. It was one of the shortest wars in history but had significant geopolitical implications. The war resulted in the secession of East Pakistan, which became the independent nation of Bangladesh. This was a major victory for India, and a significant setback for Pakistan. The war was characterized by the large-scale atrocities against civilians in East Pakistan and the subsequent mass refugee influx into India. It was a war that changed the map of South Asia, and set a precedent for international intervention in genocidal campaigns. Next up, we have a war that lasted just a few days less. At number 9, the SixDay War between Israel and neighboring Arab states. A conflict that erupted in the simmering heat of June 1967. The SixDay War was a swift and decisive military confrontation. It unfolded over the course of 6 intense days, as the name suggests, and involved Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. The war was sparked by escalating tensions and territorial disputes in the Middle East, and it ended with a resounding victory for Israel. The impacts of the Six-Day War were far-reaching and continue to shape the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East to this day. Israel seized control of the Gaza Strip, the Sinai Peninsula, the West Bank, and the Golan Heights, considerably expanding its territory. This territorial expansion set the stage for ongoing disputes and conflicts that persist even now. Moving on, our next war was even shorter. Number 8 on our list is the football war between El Salvador and Honduras. Despite its playful name, the football war was anything but a game. It was a 4-day conflict that erupted in July 1969 following a series of football matches between the two nations. The matches were the spark that reignited long-standing tensions over land reform and immigration issues. In the end, the war resulted in significant casualties and economic damage on both sides. El Salvador, the victor, found itself isolated internationally, while Honduras faced a refugee crisis with thousands of Salvadorans returning home. Interestingly, despite the war's brief duration, it had long-lasting impacts. It exposed the deep-seated issues between the two countries, which led to decades of diplomatic estrangement. The football war, a mere 4-day conflict, is a stark reminder of how quickly tensions can escalate, and the long-lasting effects even the shortest wars can have on nations and their people. Now let's cut the time in half for our next war. Number 7, the Serbo-Bulgarian War. A conflict that may not ring a bell for many, but its brevity is nothing short of fascinating. This war, which took place between November 14th and 28th, 1885, was a result of a territorial dispute between Serbia and Bulgaria. Despite its short duration, this war was far from insignificant. It lasted just 2 days, but the aftermath had far-reaching effects. The war resulted in a Bulgarian victory, leading to the stabilization of Bulgaria's eastern border. The defeat had a profound impact on Serbia, driving it to seek alliances with other Balkan states, setting the stage for the formation of the Balkan League. Moreover, this war is a testament to the power of diplomacy. The conflict was swiftly ended by the intervention of Austria-Hungary, demonstrating the role of diplomacy in preventing prolonged conflict. Our next war was over in less than a day. At number 6, we have the Anglo-Zanzibar War. This war is an intriguing one indeed. Taking place in the late 1800s, it is famously known as the shortest recorded war in history. Now you might be wondering, just how short was it? Well, believe it or not, the entire conflict lasted for a mere 45 minutes. Yes, within the span of a single episode of your favorite sitcom, a war had begun and ended. The war was a brief, yet significant conflict between the British Empire and the Sultanate of Zanzibar on the 27th of August, 1896. The disagreement arose over the succession of the Sultanate after the death of the previous Sultan. The British favored one candidate, the Zanzibaris another. The short-lived battle resulted in a decisive British victory and marked the end of the Sultanate's independence. Now, let's move to the top 5 shortest wars. Number 5 on our list is the Cod Wars between Iceland and the UK. Now don't be deceived by the playful name. The Cod Wars were a series of confrontations from the 1950s to 1970s over fishing rights in the North Atlantic. While there was no actual warfare, the tension lasted for a couple of hours at its most intense, resulting in a diplomatic standoff. Although it was a war without casualties or traditional battles, the Cod Wars had significant implications. The primary impact was a shift in the balance of power at sea. Iceland, a small island nation, stood up to one of the world's naval superpowers and won, expanding its fishing limits from 4 to 200 nautical miles. Moreover, it led to a significant drop in the UK's fish stocks. This in turn had a ripple effect on the British fishing industry, causing economic stress and job loss in several coastal communities. Getting shorter and shorter, our next war was over in less than an hour. At number 4, we have the Pastry War between France and Mexico. This conflict, which sounds like it belongs in a bakery rather than a battlefield, surprisingly took place in the late 1800s. Now, you might be wondering, how long did this peculiar war last? A mere 30 minutes. Yes, you heard that right, 30 minutes. The war was sparked by a French pastry chef who claimed that Mexican officers had damaged his bakery during a riot in Mexico City. France demanded an astronomical amount in reparations, which Mexico refused, leading to a naval blockade by France. The key outcome? Mexico ended up paying the demanded reparations. However, the conflict raised serious questions about foreign intervention and sovereignty, setting the stage for future international disputes. The Pastry War, despite its humorous name, had far-reaching implications that went beyond the kitchen and into the realm of international politics. We are now down to the top 3 shortest wars. Number 3 on our list is the War of Jenkins Ear. This conflict, which lasted a grand total of just 20 minutes, is one of the most peculiar incidents in the annals of military history. Originating from a dispute between Great Britain and Spain in 1739, this war was named after a British sea captain named Robert Jenkins. Jenkins claimed that a Spanish Coast Guard officer had severed his ear during a search of his ship, which was suspected of smuggling. The ear was allegedly presented to Parliament, sparking outrage and leading to war. Despite its brief duration, the War of Jenkins Ear had significant impacts. It caused a shift in the balance of power in the Caribbean and marked the beginning of a series of conflicts between Britain and Spain. It's a stark reminder that even the smallest incidents can lead to monumental consequences, and now the top 2 shortest wars in history. At number 2 we have the Emu War in Australia. Now this may sound like a joke, but I assure you, it was very much real. In the year 1932, Australia found itself in a peculiar conflict against an unlikely enemy: emus. Yes, you heard that right, the large, flightless birds native to Australia. This unusual war lasted a little more than a month. The primary combatants were a small group of Australian soldiers and around 20,000 emus. The conflict arose when the emus began to invade farmland in Western Australia, wreaking havoc on crops in their search for water and food. Despite the military's best efforts, the emus proved to be surprisingly resilient adversaries. The war ended inconclusively with both sides claiming victory. The farmers eventually got their fence, and the emus, well, they just kept on being emus. And finally, the shortest war in history. And at number 1, once again, the Anglo-Zanzibar War. Let's delve back into this blink-and-you-miss-it conflict. Unfolding on the 27th of August, 1896, this war between the British Empire and the Sultanate of Zanzibar is the shortest recorded war in history. From the first shot fired to the unconditional surrender, the entire conflict lasted between 38 to 45 minutes. Yes, you heard it right. Less than the average lunch break. The conflict was sparked by the British Empire's objection to the newly appointed Sultan, who had failed to meet the conditions of a treaty. The British naval bombardment quickly overwhelmed the Sultan's palace, bringing the conflict to a swift end. The Anglo-Zanzibar War holds the record for the shortest war due to its rapid resolution, a testament to the power of decisive action. And there you have it, the top 10 shortest wars in history, proving that not all conflicts drag on for years or decades.